What if everything you know about a country came from people who had never been there? Not a hypothetical. That's most of us when it comes to Iran. What if the place you've been told is a threat is also home to a sacred fire that has burned without interruption for 1,500 years? To a mountain that was once an ocean floor? To an island where people cook with the ground itself? I'm Daniel Reeves, and I've photographed conflict zones across the Middle East for 15 years. Getting a press visa to Iran was the hardest thing I've ever done professionally. What I found when I got there, I still don't have the right words for. Let me try to show you instead. I want to be honest with you about something before we go any further. I came to Iran carrying 15 years of accumulated assumptions, wire photos, agency dispatches, briefing documents, conversations with diplomats and analysts who spoke about this country with great authority and had never been inside it either. That's the thing nobody tells you about expertise on Iran. Most of it is constructed from the outside, looking in through a window that nobody has actually opened in a very long time. I'm a photographer from Chicago's South Side, where the world felt local and immediate, and places like Iran existed only as words on a television screen. I spent my 20s and 30s learning to move through conflict zones with a camera, learning to be present without being consumed, learning to witness without flinching. I thought I was good at seeing things clearly. Iran taught me that clarity is harder than I thought. The press visa took 14 months. 14 months of paperwork, 2 rejections, 1 appeal, and a 3rd application I honestly did not expect to succeed. When the approval came through, I read the document several times, then booked the flight before I could change my mind. I want to tell you what I actually found, with my own eyes, in the weeks I spent moving through one of the most misunderstood countries on the surface of this planet. The first thing that hit me, before any landmark or conversation, was the geography. You cannot understand Iran without understanding its shape. The Alborz Mountains rise across the north in a wall of rock and snow separating the Caspian coast from the interior plateau. The Zagros Range sweeps down through the west like a spine, pushing the country eastward into the vast central desert. The Persian Gulf guards the south. The result is a landscape that has shaped not just the climate but the psychology of the people who have lived inside it for thousands of years. Iran has been invaded many times. It has never been permanently conquered. Standing inside those mountain ranges, that fact stops being surprising and starts being obvious. Iranians raise a distinction early in almost every conversation with a foreign visitor. They are Persian, not Arab. It is not a small point, and the more time you spend here, the more you understand why. Farsi is one of the great literary languages of human civilization. The poetry of Hafez and Rumi and Ferdowsi is not ancient curiosity, it is quoted from memory, woven into daily speech by people of every generation. When a taxi driver quotes a line of Hafez to make a point about traffic, it isn't showing off. It's simply how the culture breathes. I grew up in a neighborhood where people communicated in fragments and music. This felt recognizable. The medium was different. The impulse was the same. The civilizational memory runs deeper still. More than 2,500 years ago, Cyrus the Great issued what many historians consider the earliest known declaration of human rights, a clay cylinder, discovered in Babylon in 1879 and now housed in the British Museum, recording his proclamation that conquered peoples could return to their homelands and practice their own customs. A modern Iranian carries that memory. When a young engineer in a Tehran cafe tells you Iran taught the world what civilization means, she isn't being arrogant. She's describing the gap between that inheritance and how the rest of the world currently sees her country. She lives with that gap every day, and it shapes everything. Think about the last headline you read about Iran. Nuclear negotiations, probably. Sanctions. Protests. The Strait of Hormuz. Now, think about whether it told you anything about the 40 million Iranians under 30. About the coffee shops where young architects and engineers debate directors the way my friends in Chicago debate sports teams. about universities producing more engineering graduates per capita than almost anywhere in the world, about what 40 million people who have never lived under any other government actually want for their own lives, as opposed to what outside analysts assume they want. The headlines aren't lying, exactly. They're selecting, and the Iran they aren't showing you is the one where half the population was born after 1994 and moves between ancient stone and digital connectivity with a fluency that would make most American 25-year-olds look slow. I want to tell you about the morning I spent inside the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque in Shiraz, because this is the moment that broke something open in me. Built in the late 19th century during the Qajar dynasty, its south-facing facade is lined with stained glass in deep rose and amber and sapphire, set into arched frames with a geometric precision that takes generations of craft to achieve. The window for the full effect is narrow the hour after sunrise, no later. A caretaker at my guest house woke me before dawn and told me, with the matter-of-fact urgency of someone who considers this essential, that I needed to be there at first light. He was right. When the light came through, the prayer hall became something I don't have adequate words for. Rose and amber pooled in the hollows of the carpet patterns. Sapphire climbed the column faces. The entire space became a single, slow-moving piece of color, breathing as the sun rose. I sat with my camera in my lap and didn't take a photograph for 20 minutes because I could feel that no photograph was going to capture what was happening. That caretaker had worked at the guest house for 31 years. He spoke no English. I spoke very limited Farsi. He didn't ask what I thought of American foreign policy. He asked if I'd been to the mosque yet and told me what time to go. That was the entire exchange, and it has stayed with me more than almost any other because it was stripped down to the essential human impulse to say, "There is something beautiful here, and I want you to see it." If you have ever tried to show someone something you love and found the words kept failing you, you understand something of what I felt that morning. And you understand something about what it means to have that experience in a country your government has categorized as an adversary. It does something to your categories. It makes them harder to hold. About an hour north of Shiraz, the landscape rises into Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire. Built over 2,500 years ago on a scale designed to communicate dominance without ambiguity. Standing at the base of the grand staircase, I felt the specific weight of accumulated time, the sense that ground can absorb so many layers of human meaning, it becomes something more than geology. The reliefs on the staircase walls show delegations from every corner of the ancient empire in procession toward the Apadana Palace, where the Achaemenid kings held their grand audiences. Men from the Indus Valley in turbans and robes, Nubian delegates leading giraffes on leads, Median nobles in distinctive round hats, Lydian merchants carrying vessels, all rendered with a specificity and dignity that tells you how the Achaemenid kings wanted the world to understand them. This was, in significant ways, the most multicultural political entity the ancient world had yet produced. And modern Iranians know it. It's part of how they understand themselves. In 330 BCE, Alexander of Macedon burned part of the complex, and the darkened patches on the columns are still visible today, not cleaned, not hidden, simply allowed to remain as fact. A conquered people leaving the mark of their conquest exactly where it fell, neither erasing it nor dramatizing it. I thought about what it means to carry the memory of being destroyed and to keep building anyway. About the civilizations that rose after Persepolis fell and the ones that rose after those. About a continuous thread of Persian identity that has survived everything that tried to sever it. From Persepolis, I traveled north to Isfahan, where I began to understand something about the relationship between beauty and survival. The centerpiece is Naqsh-e-Jahan Square, one of the largest public squares in the world, surrounded on all four sides by arcaded structures in tile work, and the particular blue-green Persian architecture uses the way Chicago uses brick, not decoration, but the primary medium of expression. Shah Abbas, I designed it in the early 17th century as a unified statement of what a civilization could be when it organized faith, commerce, and power into a single coherent space. The Shah Mosque anchors the south. The smaller, more intimate Sheikh Lotfullah Mosque, covered in cream tile work that shifts from pale gold to deep rose as the afternoon light changes, occupies the east. The Ali Kapu Palace stands on the west, its tiered balcony overlooking the old polo field. In the arcades, merchants have sold copper and carpets and saffron continuously for 400 years. I sat in a tea house and watched families spread blankets on the grass. Elderly men play chess, children run, pigeons organize themselves with their usual casual authority. It looked like a park on a Sunday afternoon, which is exactly what it was. It also happened to be one of the most important architectural achievements in human history. Both things were equally true. A short walk away, along the Zayande River, stands the Si-o-se-pol Bridge, 33 arches of pale stone built in the early 17th century, functioning simultaneously as bridge, dam, and promenade, with vaulted chambers at water level where the sound of moving water once filled the space. Except that when I was there was no river. The Zayande, whose name means the life-giving river, has been running dry with increasing frequency because of upstream agricultural diversion and shifting rainfall. Iran is home to one of the oldest continuous Jewish communities on Earth, dating back roughly 2,600 years to the Babylonian captivity and Cyrus's decree allowing exiles to return home, many of whom chose to stay in Persia instead. Their descendants are still there. Iran's Jewish community today numbers somewhere between 9 and 20,000 people, the largest in the Middle East outside Israel, with synagogues, schools, hospitals, and a guaranteed seat in parliament reserved for a Jewish representative. These facts exist in the same country that is publicly hostile to the Israeli government and whose leaders have made statements about Israel that are internationally condemned. The contradiction is real and not easily resolved. But the community is also real, not a token. I visited a synagogue in Tehran. I won't describe the specific location or the people I spoke with, out of respect for their privacy, and felt a very specific kind of quiet. Prayer books on the shelves, family photographs on the walls, the smell of old wood and candle wax that is the same in every house of worship I've entered in every country I've visited. I sat in the back and thought about everything I'd been told about Iran that this room quietly contradicted. Not all of it. Some of what I'd been told was accurate and important, but some of it was incomplete. Iran is also the birthplace of Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic faiths, predating both Christianity and Islam. The community is small today, perhaps 60,000 people, but its cultural footprint is enormous. The struggle between light and darkness, the reverence for fire, the moral framework of good thoughts, good words, good actions, woven into Persian culture so deeply it persists even among the Muslim majority. In Yazd, at the fire temple called the Atash Bayram, a flame has burned continuously since approximately 470 CE, 1500 years. It survived the Arab conquest, the Mongol invasions, multiple dynasties, the 1979 revolution, and international sanctions. The priests who tend it have never allowed it to go out. I stood in front of that flame for a long time, trying to understand what it means to protect something across that span, to decide, generation after generation, that the continuity itself is the point. If you have ever kept something alive that the world gave you every reason to let die, a tradition, a language, a relationship, a practice that no longer made obvious practical sense, then you understand something of what the Zoroastrian community of Yazd has been doing for 1500 years. The fire does not know about geopolitics. It simply burns. Yazd itself is built almost entirely from sun-dried mud brick in tones of pale ochre and dust, continuously inhabited for thousands of years. Its narrow streets shaded by design to minimize sun exposure. Rising above the rooflines, dozens of rectangular stone towers reach upward. The badgers, wind catchers, a passive ventilation system developed here over 1,000 years ago that remains among the most elegant engineering solutions to extreme heat any civilization has produced. A tall tower, open at the top and oriented to catch the prevailing breeze, funnels cooler air down into the living spaces below. No electricity, no moving parts. In a city where summer regularly exceeds 110 degrees, the badger isn't a curiosity. It's what makes the city livable. because the Persian Gulf Coast contains some of the most geologically extraordinary landscapes I've encountered anywhere. And they receive almost no international attention because the international media is focused on the politics of the strait, not on the fact that the island of Hormuz has beaches made of deep crimson sand. Hormuz sits at the mouth of the Strait of Hormuz, and from a distance it looks like a planet that isn't quite Earth. Soil saturated with iron oxide, cliffs banded in yellow sulfur and white gypsum, and crimson iron running horizontally across the rock like geological time made visible. The incoming tide carries enough mineral sediment that the water at the shore takes on a color locals call the bleeding waves. What I was completely unprepared for was learning that the red earth isn't merely geological, it's an ingredient. The people of Hormuz have been cooking with this soil for as long as anyone can trace an edible, iron-rich red earth used to make surak, a condiment mixed with salt, dried citrus peel, and local fish. I tasted it in a small waterfront restaurant, prepared by a woman who'd learned the recipe from her mother and grandmother. It tasted like the earth smelled. Mineral and sharp. I have eaten in a lot of countries. I've never eaten somewhere that tasted so specifically of the place where I was sitting. On the larger island of Keshm, a short ferry ride away, the interior contains a geological feature called Stars Valley, or Sedere-Ku, the Valley of the Fallen Star. Local explanation holds that a star struck the earth with enough force to shatter the ground and send columns of sedimentary stone rising skyward. The geological explanation is 2 million years of wind and seasonal rain carving layered rock into pillars and arches reaching 60 feet. Both are, in their own way, accurate. In the early evening, when shadows lengthen and wind moves through the narrow gaps between pillars, the valley generates a sound I can only describe as the landscape breathing. People from the nearby village say the canyons are inhabited after dark, that the sound is the jinn of Islamic tradition guarding the silence of wild places, and nobody goes in at night. I went in at dusk and stood in one of the narrow corridors, listening to wind move through stone above my head, and understood, without being able to fully explain why, exactly what they meant. In East Azerbaijan province, in the shadow of Mount Sahand, there's a village called Kandovan, where people have been living inside volcanic rock formations for approximately 700 years. Cone-shaped columns, some 60 feet tall, created by ancient eruptions and shaped by millennia of erosion, hollowed out into multi-story homes with rooms and staircases carved directly into the stone. Ground level for livestock, upper levels for kitchens and sleeping quarters, the rock providing natural thermal regulation that keeps interior temperatures around 70 degrees regardless of season. Families live there today, in homes their ancestors carved centuries ago. I walked through in the early morning, mist from Mount Sahand still hanging between the stone cones, smoke rising from kitchen fires through openings in the rock, and the whole place had the quality of a landscape existing outside normal time. I had never heard of it before I arrived in Iran. I kept encountering this same theme everywhere in Iran. Intelligence embedded in things. In the Badgers, in the Kuanats, running beneath the desert. In a mosque designed around the exact angle of early morning sun. Iran is a country that has been solving hard problems for a very long time. Not all of its current problems are solved, and some of them cause real, undeniable suffering. But the accumulated intelligence of this civilization, the density of practical and aesthetic knowledge in its architecture, its food, its poetry is something international headlines simply don't have room for. Without that context, the country becomes something it isn't, a threat with a flag, rather than a civilization with a history. No account of Iran is complete without Tehran, where the country's contradictions are most compressed and most vivid. 13 million people spread across a basin with the Alborz Mountains rising to the north, snow-capped peaks visible on clear days above one of the most traffic-congested cities in the region. The Azadi Tower stands at the western entrance, a white marble arch built in 1971 to mark 2,500 years of Persian monarchy, and has since absorbed the weight of everything that happened to this city afterward. The revolution, the war, the years of sanctions. The marble is still white. The plaza is still full. Inside the Golistan Palace, the old Qajar royal compound, there's a hall of mirrors that tells a particular story about Iran and the world. In the 19th century, sheets of European glass ordered for the palace broke during the journey across the mountains. Rather than discard the shattered glass, Iranian artisans collected every fragment, cut the pieces into smaller shapes, and pressed them into the wet plaster of the palace walls, a technique called ayneh-kari, mirrorwork, covering the walls and ceilings in millions of hand-cut fragments, set at varying angles to catch and multiply light. Standing inside it is like standing inside a fractured version of yourself, reflected back from 1,000 angles at once. I've been thinking about that image ever since I left. The broken glass that became the decoration. The fragments arranged into something that catches more light than the original unbroken surface ever could. It feels like something about this country specifically. Iran has been broken, invaded, conquered, sanctioned, internally fractured in ways that have caused genuine suffering. And it keeps making things. It keeps building, composing poetry, designing mosques, tending flames that should, by any reasonable calculation, have gone out centuries ago. In Gilan province, in the north, the Rudkhan castle required a climb of more than 1,000 stone steps through a temperate rainforest, so dense the light barely reached the forest floor. Thick moss-covering walls built during the Sassanid era and expanded in the 11th century never breached throughout its military history. Persian leopards moved through those forests, using the heavy canopy for cover. Standing on the battlements in the fog rolling in from the Caspian coast below, looking out over overlapping forest ridges disappearing into mist, I thought, this country has been keeping things intact for a very long time against very long odds. I had arrived with a camera and 14 months of paperwork and a head full of assumptions, and most of the assumptions were wrong. On the ridges above Yazd, 2 circular stone towers rise against the desert sky, the Towers of Silence, the Dakmas of the Zoroastrian tradition. For centuries, the community brought their dead here for sky burial, rooted in the belief that fire, earth, and water are sacred elements the body must not be allowed to contaminate. The practice was officially discontinued in the mid-20th century, partly for public health reasons and partly because the vulture population that made it possible had declined. But the towers still stand, massive and gray against the pale sky, looking out over a city that sent its dead up those hillsides for longer than most cities have existed. I climbed up in the late afternoon and sat in the silence at the base of one, alone, with only the wind and the stone and the particular stillness of a place where something old and human has been happening for a very long time and has now stopped. The towers said something about a culture that takes its sacred obligations seriously enough to build massive stone structures to fulfill them, and what it means to maintain that seriousness across 1,000 years of invasion and conversion and change. In Tabriz, near the northwestern border, I spent a morning inside the Grand Bazaar, 5.5 miles of interconnected brick-vaulted corridors, the largest covered marketplace in the world, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that has operated continuously since the height of the Silk Road, when caravans from China, India, and the Mediterranean converged here. Specific sections, called Rasta, specialize in particular goods: carpets, copperware, spices, dried fruits, goldsmiths. The smell inside the spice section, cumin and saffron and dried rosebuds and cardamom, layered on top of each other in a closed stone space that has been absorbing those scents for centuries, is one of the most powerful sensory experiences I've had anywhere in the world. I stood in the middle of it and could not move for a minute, not because it was overwhelming unpleasantly, because it was overwhelming in the specific way a place becomes when the density of accumulated human activity turns into a physical sensation. I want to tell you about the young people, because they're the part of this story I think about most now that I'm back in Chicago. 50% of Iran's population is under 30. That's not an abstraction, it's a daily reality in every coffee shop in Tehran and Isfahan and Shiraz, in university districts, in parks in the early evening where young couples negotiate the boundaries of what's allowed with a fluency that comes from being born into a system of restrictions and learning, from childhood, how to move within and around it. Many feel constrained, many are frustrated, many want things their government doesn't currently permit. But they're also building lives, studying, starting businesses, making art, debating artificial intelligence and urban planning and the films of Asghar Farhadi. They use VPNs with the same casual reflexiveness my friends in Chicago use ad blockers. The workaround has become a basic life skill, as unremarkable as knowing how to use a search engine. On my last evening in Tehran, I sat in a rooftop cafe in the northern part of the city and talked for 3 hours with a group of young architects and their friends. None of them cared about American politics the way people elsewhere are usually curious about it. They cared about their city, the traffic, the housing prices, whether Tehran's urban planning was serving its residents or failing them, the mountains to the north you sometimes couldn't see because of the smog. One of them asked what Chicago was like. I said it was a city of neighborhoods, each one distinct, each with its own relationship to the lake. He nodded and said Tehran was like that too, that you could spend years there and still find corners you'd never been to. We talked about architecture most of the night, about whether a city's design shapes the consciousness of its residents or the other way around, about what it meant that a passive ventilation system invented 1,000 years ago was still the most elegant solution to a desert's heat, about what it would mean to carry that kind of embedded intelligence into modern buildings. It was the best conversation I had in Iran. It was about architecture, and about Chicago, and about mountains you can't see when the smog is bad. Before I left the country, I made one more journey. To East Azerbaijan province, to a place called Lake Urmia, or rather, a place where a lake called Lake Urmia used to be. A 9-mile concrete highway cuts across what was once the largest lake in the Middle East, the 6th largest saltwater lake in the world, covering over 2,000 square miles. Today, it has lost more than 80% of its volume. I drove across that highway, stopped in the middle, and got out onto pale crystalline salt flats, stretching to the horizon in every direction. Abandoned piers standing on dry ground, miles from the receding shoreline. I felt the specific grief of a lost ecosystem, a body of water drained away over decades by upstream dams and irrigation demands and shifting rainfall, decisions made by people who presumably didn't fully anticipate the consequence of what they were deciding. The lake wasn't destroyed by malice. It was depleted by an accumulation of decisions that each seemed locally rational and collectively became a catastrophe. The white salt stretching to the horizon is what a series of reasonable-seeming choices looks like when you add them together across 30 years. If you have ever watched something disappear incrementally, so slowly that each individual loss seemed manageable, until one day you looked up and realized the aggregate of all those small losses was enormous, then you know something of what the shores of Lake Urmia say to the people who grew up swimming in it. I'm back in Chicago now. My photographs are on the wall of my apartment. The red stone I picked up on Hormuz Island sits on my desk and leaves a faint rust-colored mark if I hold it too long. My notebooks are full of details I haven't figured out how to use yet. The rooftop conversation with the architects, the caretaker in Shiraz, who woke me before dawn, the dry riverbed under the Si-o-se-pol bridge, and the musicians playing in the empty chamber where the sound of water used to be, the flame in Yaz that has been burning since the year 470, the mist over Kandavan at sunrise. All of it sits in my memory with a weight I haven't been able to reduce to a simple conclusion, which is, I think, exactly as it should be. A country that has been building and breaking and rebuilding for 2,500 years doesn't resolve into a simple conclusion. It resolves into layers, into the specific quality of light at a particular hour in a particular mosque, into the taste of red earth mixed with citrus and salt, into the sound of wind through 60-foot stone pillars at dusk, into the voices of people on a rooftop talking about their city, with the particular combination of frustration and love you hear from people genuinely invested in a place. This is Iran. Not the full Iran, no 4 weeks, and no number of photographs could capture that. But more of it than a headline can hold, more than I knew before I went, and more than I expected to still be thinking about on an ordinary Tuesday morning in Chicago, looking at a piece of red stone on my desk that stains my fingers when I pick it up. This asks us to consider the distance between what we know and what we know from, whether the picture we carry of a place reflects the place itself or the medium through which we received it. Most Americans know Iran through headlines, and headlines aren't wrong, but they select for crisis and conflict, because those are the moments that register as news. The life of a civilization, the 1,500-year flame, the 1,000-year wind catcher, the 2,500-year staircase carved with the faces of 100 peoples being welcomed to the center of the world, is not news. It's too slow and continuous and complex to fit into a headline. But it is more important than almost any individual headline, because it's the context without which the headlines cannot actually be understood. The mistake most people make is not believing false things about Iran. It's believing true things about Iran in isolation from the rest of what's true. The nuclear program is real. The political repression is real. The suffering of people on the wrong side of the government's decisions is real, documented, and not to be minimized. And the 1500-year flame is also real. And the 50% of the population under 30 is real. And the woman who puts red earth in her cooking because that's what her grandmother did is real. And the architects on a rooftop in Tehran who want to build better cities are real. All of it is real simultaneously, and the only way to understand a country is to hold all of it at once, which is exactly as difficult as it sounds, and exactly as necessary as it is difficult. If there's one thing I'd ask you to do after this, it's to hold the question open a little longer than feels comfortable. The question of what Iran is. Not to decide too quickly, not to let the most recent headline or the most confident voice in the room close the question before the full picture has had a chance to develop. The full picture takes time. It took me 4 weeks on the ground and 14 months of paperwork just to begin seeing it. I'm still developing it. I think I will be for a long time. And I suspect that's true of most places worth actually understanding rather than just categorizing from a distance. Comment 1 if you think the younger generation of Iran will shape the country's relationship with the world in ways the current headlines don't reflect. Comment 2 if you have ever visited a place that fundamentally changed something you thought you understood about the world. Comment 3 if something in this story surprised you or contradicted something you had previously believed about Iran, and tell me where you're watching from right now. City, state, country. What time is it there? I read every single one of these. The geography of who is watching is always one of the most interesting things about making something like this. This narrative is presented through the perspective of Daniel Reeves, a fictional journalist character created to provide a first-person American voice for this documentary story. All geographical locations, historical facts, cultural descriptions, and real-world details including the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque, Persepolis, Naqsh-e Jahan Square, the Si-o-se-pol Bridge, the Atash Bayram Fire Temple in Yazd, the Badgir Windcatcher System, the Kuanats, Hormuz Island, Stars Valley on Keshem, the village of Kandovan, the Rudkhan Castle, the Tabriz Grand Bazaar, the Golistan Palace, and the Azadi Tower are real places with real histories described as accurately as possible. The Jewish community in Iran, the Zoroastrian community in Yazd, and the demographic statistics about Iran's population are drawn from verified reporting. Daniel Reeves and his specific personal experiences are fictional. Any resemblance to real individuals with that name is purely coincidental. If this story gave you something to think about, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. There are more stories like this one waiting. Stories about the places the world has decided it already understands. See you soon.